Taping now. How's it good, right? Your food here is very good. Your food here is very good. That's good.
Normally I get a mix, meat, pork, and chicken. Not coffee.
They have pork also? I don't know that.
I'm over chicken and over pork.
Absolutely. Oh, it's great. A lot of people are showing up.
It's great back here right here.
Here on a rainy night. So, you know, how did you get to speak to my brother-in-law?
Everybody wait.
What's some of that justice?
I was waiting at you earlier. You didn't see.
Yes. Yeah, but you know what? Could you do me a favor? No, I'll do it. I gotta figure a way to get it on your page. I want to get it on your page.
She's driving right now.
To make everything better. And they expect the election to fight.
She's a teacher. She needs one every now and
Okay.
Frenching on chips.
Ah, you're getting my bad example.
Hi folks, we're going to get started. Can you hear in the background? Can you hear okay? Is that better? Check. That all right? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Looks like a lot of Democrats in the house tonight. Very excited. We got a very full evening. Very excited about our speaker this evening. Thank you for coming to join us. We're going to start off with our pledge. So everybody can stand. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Have a seat. All right, I see a lot of new faces in the house tonight. Who are guests this evening? Hi, welcome. Thanks for coming. Do we have any new members tonight? All right. So we're going to start off this evening with any candidates or electeds that we currently have visiting with us. And I know Sheriff Gonzalez is here. I'm going to let him get started first.
Thank you so much. Good evening. It's an honor to be here. I'm also home. I'm a Humble area resident as well. And so just here to say thank you for your advocacy, for your support, for continuing to advocate and push for democratic values. We need them more than ever. Obviously for me, top of mind is always public safety. So we also grapple a lot with the mental health system as well. That's woefully inadequate in our state, sadly. So we see a lot of it coming through the work that we do, and also very concerned about just the drugs that we're seeing in our community, especially fentanyl. Many don't realize that last year we had 1,000 people that overdosed last year in Harris County. 500 of them were linked to fentanyl. So we've got to make sure that we're providing that treatment, that outreach, being proactive with intervention and prevention, see what we can do for our youth as well to make sure they're staying in school and obviously graduating and staying out of trouble. That's very important. So we'll be doing some summer programs to make sure that we're steering them in the right direction. But really just wanted to stop by and say hello and get back involved now that we're kind of past a lot of the COVID stuff, and time to get back out there and say hello to everyone. So thank y'all very much.
Hello everyone, good evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Patricia Olivares, and I am going to be your next Houston City Councilwoman for District E.
Hoorah!
So a little bit about me. I always like to start off with this story. So 4 generations of my family have served in the United States military. My grandfather in Korea, my Uncle Al in Vietnam, my Uncle Henry in Desert Storm, and myself in Iraq and Afghanistan. So that is the type of leadership dedication that I am bringing to Houston City Council. Why am I running? Public safety, flooding mitigation, and of course, just like Sheriff Ed Gonzalez mentioned, mental health. We have a huge deficit of mental health care workers in our area, and we need to make sure that we are addressing that way we can take that load off our county jail and our police officers. I wish that I could say that just votes would get me into office, but unfortunately that's not the case. I also need donations. $5, $10, $15, whatever you could do, I would greatly appreciate that. So please, after the meeting, please come up to me. Please ask me any questions. I'm always here. I like to on my card is my personal cell phone number, and people tell me, oh, you're brave for that. You're brave for giving out your phone number. But the reason why I do that is I want to make sure that I'm accessible to you. I always want to make sure that you have my phone number, and that if you have any questions or if you have concerns, you can reach out to me. So thank you so much. My name is Patricia Olivares, and I will be your next Houston City Councilwoman.
Conchita?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Conchita Reyes. It's great to come back again. I see familiar faces, and I'm glad y'all recognize me as well. I'm running for City Council at Large, Position 1. My platform is for public safety, infrastructure, flooding, and budget. And we all know the City of Houston is facing a big budget challenge. And I, with my experience, my 20 years of experience of accounting, tax, audit prep work, I will definitely be hands-on when it comes to budget. I'm the type that thinks outside the box, and so I will find a way, figure out a way, or solve a way of figuring out how to save money, or cut costs, or find grants that we can supplement, or organizations, nonprofit organizations, to supplement certain programs that we will need lifted for our benefit, so that we can save the budget and also maintain the public service that we all deserve. Kingwood, Humble, City of Houston, everywhere else, we all deserve that type of public safety and also flooding. So I come to y'all because, again, like Patricia said, we are in need of assistance, and of course, I was part of the Lead Together PAC, and I also was part of the Clubs in Action, and I've seen the work that Humble has done. I've seen what John and Ann Luke has done, and I just want to acknowledge y'all and also say thank you in advance. We did an amazing job with Harris County, but we can also do an amazing job for the City of Houston. So I ask you to come out and support me. My name, again, is Conchita Reyes, and I'm running for City Council at Large, Position 1. Thank you so much.
Oops.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Obes Nwambara. That's Obes, O-B-E-S, and I'm running for Houston City Council at Large, position 2. My platform is pretty simple. We need to work to reduce traffic. We have some of the worst traffic in the nation. We need to improve our water infrastructure. We're the 4th, soon to be 3rd largest city in America. We should never have to worry about having clean drinking water when we go to the faucet or take a shower. We also should never have to worry about or wonder whether or not when we turn the faucet on, the water's going to come out at all. It's 2023. That should be something that we take for granted here in the city of Houston. I'm going to work to make sure that becomes the case. And last but not least, we need to invest in the future of our city. Now, when I say that to people think, oh yeah, early childhood education, and that is a big part of it. It's also about making sure that we create opportunities for people, whether they go to college or not. That means getting people back into trades. That means securing our energy future by creating the electrical workers and plumbers and construction workers of tomorrow. Everybody needs to have a path, and need to have a path right here in the city of Houston. So if those things matter to you or important to you, I hope you'll support me. Go to my website, obesfortwo.com. That's OBESFORTWO.com. I went through and gave everybody a push card. You got a QR code on there. If you want to support my campaign financially, you can scan that and take you directly to my Act Blue page. Please give what you can. It's also got the URL for the website. Any questions that you have that should be answered on the website, they're not answered there. My email is there, goes directly to my cell phone. I answer all my emails that you send me, so feel free to ask me whatever you need to. Once again, my name is Obes Nwambara. I'm ready to be your Houston City Council member in at-large C2. Thank you so much.
Eric, want to come up and say a couple words?
Hello, my name is Eric Lacey. I just finished a race for Humble City Council position 1 on Saturday and lost by 27 votes. 27 votes. I ran in 2021 and I lost by 70 votes. So I won 2 elections and lost by less than 100 votes. But I did both of those elections on my own. Pretty much paid for everything on my own. I block walked, I called, I collected numbers and text and all of that, and it was 27 votes short. So I'm looking to do this thing again. I don't want to give up. There is a huge good old boy network in the city of Humble that I feel like that we must break up. And in order to break it up, you gotta get up and get out and talk to people and let them know what's going on and let them decide who they feel like needs to be in office. And so we just needed some more votes, and it would have happened. We just gotta rally people to go vote. I talked to over 2,000 people. 2,000 people answered their doors. About 150 of them took a sign, and about 500 said, "I'm going to vote for you." If a quarter of those had come, yeah, or half of them had come, we would have won the race. So I just want to encourage you that your vote matters, your vote counts. In 2021, there was one lady lost by 1 vote. So voting matters, and we got to really impress that upon the base to tell them to go vote, because it's really important.
It is.
Have I missed any other candidates or current elected officials? No, we'll have you come later. Okay, awesome, thank you. Going once, going twice? All right. All right, so you're gonna have to put up with my reading for just a minute. Apologies in advance. So it's my pleasure to introduce to everybody in the room tonight and everybody on Eberto's program, Nancy Beck Young. She's the chair of the Department of History and Associate Director of the U of H Center for Public History. She has a wide range of undergraduate courses, including Second half of the U.S. survey, 20th century U.S. politics from FDR to the present, electing presidents in the 20th century, among many others. Dr. Young uses a variety of methods to help her students deepen their appreciation for our American history and their critical thinking and their writing skills. She appeared on my radar while I was listening to a podcast by Rachel Maddow called Ultra, where she was selected as a political expert featured in several episodes. The podcast tells an important historical story about the political extremism and plans to shatter the American democracy in the 1940s. In the series, Dr. Young recounted powerful plots interwoven in high-ranking U.S. government officials and the links seditious congressmen went to succeed. She describes this as a cautionary tale about why we must be very careful who we are sending to Washington and Austin. Please join me in welcoming our very special guest, Dr. Nancy Beck Young.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me come north. I hail from the southwestern part of Houston. I'm down in the Westbury-Meyerland area and have been here for 16 years and was really happy when the University of Houston came calling and I got to come home. I had been teaching in Southern Illinois for 10 years before that, and it was nice to come back to Texas. And I can't imagine where else I would like to be. So my research, which played a role in Rachel Maddow's development of the podcast Ultra, was ironically for a project that resulted in a book that made a very different argument about American politics during the war years. And I'd like to start by telling that as a countervailing story to the story of the fascists and the seditionists who were working in Congress before and during World War II. The book that I wrote and published in 20-something or another, 13 I think, made the argument that moderates really matter in American politics, that it was the moderates during the war years that made important decisions about tax policy and rationing policy and military resource procurement, etc. And those decisions allowed for the New Deal to be sustained and carried forward into the 1940s and the 1950s and the 1960s and become a stable part of American governance. That these moderates who got too little attention because they weren't bomb throwers on the right or bomb throwers on the left, but instead were roll up your sleeves, get to work kind of people, really made a huge, huge difference in American politics. And here I'm thinking about some Texans like Sam Rayburn, who was Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives during the World War II period. If it had not been for Sam Rayburn, the United States would not have had an army when Pearl Harbor was bombed. Just sit with that for a minute. In 1940, the U.S. Congress passed and created a one-year draft. And the men that were mustered in 1940 were set to muster out in the late summer, early fall of 1941. The world had become less safe between 1940 and 1941. And so lawmakers realized the importance of extending the terms of that draft so that there would continue to be a military to serve. And had it not been for Rayburn's skill wielding the gavel in the U.S. House of Representatives, we wouldn't have had an army, because it's just a handful of votes. Votes matter. Votes matter when we're going out on election day, and votes matter in Congress. From there, I'd like to segue into telling the story that John invited me here to come and discuss. But I think it's important to see that there was this other path that the seditionists could have taken to shore up American government as opposed to trying to tear it down. the story of fascism before and during World War II is multifaceted, and there is a long list of characters in this drama. This alone should frighten us. You know, one or two fascists is scary enough, but more fascists than I have time to list is a bit more than we can take. Some of the members of Congress that I'm most concerned with are Senators Ernest Lundeen, who was a farmer laborite, that was actually a political party from Minnesota, Burton K. Wheeler, a Democrat from Montana, William Langer, a Republican from North Dakota. So if you're noticing something here, there was not a political identity with which fascists naturally associated during World War II. They came from the Democrats, they came from third parties, they came from Republicans, and that's important to hold on to. There were also some members of the House of Representatives that we need to mention. Hamilton Fish, who was a Republican from New York. Think about how his name might be turned into a nickname, Ham Fish. Okay, yes. Pause for laughter. And Martin Dies, who was a member of the House from just down the road. I don't know if I'm pointing in the right direction. I'm completely turned around, having driven in the rain, but from the Beaumont area. And we'll hear a little bit more about him in a few minutes. And then there are two other people who will come into our story, George Sylvester Viereck and George Hill. And they both collaborated with members of Congress to pull off these fascist, seditious activities. Viereck was a lobbyist for the Nazis. And not Nazi wannabes, actual Nazis in Germany. You know, the ones that Hitler, yeah, those Nazis. He was a lobbyist for them. And George Hill worked as a member of Ham Fish's staff in Congress. There are many, many more names, but this will give you a sense of the story. And I want to tell this story in parallel. First, the story of the lawmakers who actively used their offices to aid the Nazis. And then next, I want to talk about the more amorphous fascism of people like Dies. Dies wasn't so much working for fascists while a member of Congress from Texas specifically. He was more generally taking positions that nonetheless made a creep toward fascism possible. Before I dive into my remarks, though, let me remind of one point from William Shakespeare from The Tempest. The past is prologue. So that's a warning to us to be careful. Because we are never safe from the threats and desires of those who don't really want to hear from the people. The people matter. And whenever a leader suggests that the people don't matter by their words, or more importantly, their deeds, such as, oh, I don't know, passing legislation to disenfranchise the voters of Harris County, that just comes to mind from what's going on in Austin these days. All right, so it matters what they say and more importantly what they do. Let me start with George Sylvester Viereck. He was born in Germany in 1884 and he graduated from the City University of New York in 1906. He was a poet and he was a well-regarded poet. He was good at it. The Saturday Evening Post dubbed him the most widely discussed young literary man in the United States today. President Theodore Roosevelt read Viereck's poetry and tried to meet with him, to discuss how the United States could improve relations with Germany in the period before World War I. So very well regarded, smart man, and had the ear of powerful figures in U.S. government. In the 1900s and the 19-teens, Viereck supported Germany more and more and became a pacifist. He edited a German-sponsored magazine in the United States during World War I and was a pro-German propagandist during the Great War. These activities came at a personal cost. His literary career at least for a period of time, was cut short. No one wanted to read his poems anymore because he was not supporting the American war effort after we became combatants in the Great War. He was dropped from the literary organizations of which he was a member and a leader, and kind of shuffled to the back row a bit. But by the 1920s and 30s, he made a comeback because isolationism became a dominant mindset in the United States with regard to foreign policy. Americans, by and large, accepted the argument that if we had just been isolationists, the Great War could have been avoided. That mess in Europe could have been avoided. We need to stay out of European problems. That doesn't get us anywhere. And so since Viereck was a pacifist and an isolationist, people started reading him again, and he started gaining influence again. And so this matters. And he starts inserting himself in politics again. In 1924, he supported the leading progressive candidate for the presidency and played a role in that campaign. Again, not a right-winger, and that's important to remember here. By the 1930s, he had three goals: to convince the Americans, the Allies, especially the British, were doomed. So don't be talking to Neville Chamberlain. Churchill's not in power yet. Don't be working with the Brits. They're doomed. They're not going anywhere. That was goal one. Goal two was to ensure American opposition to the war that was brewing in Europe as Hitler went on his land grab throughout Europe. Just stay away. Put up the fence. Don't look there. Don't get involved. Don't do this. It's not good. And the third goal was to say and do things to ensure continuing U.S. trade with Germany. Yeah, that's probably what he was really getting paid to do. Yeah, it didn't take long to figure that one out. He paid the equivalent in today's money between $1 and $2 million to influence opinion on Capitol Hill. Yeah, so he paid. So who's he paying? Who's he paying? He's paying members. He's paying the staff of members. This is shady business. He remained a pacifist and was a German sympathizer before and during World War II. He was a ghostwriter of speeches for at least one member of Congress. He wrote 6 speeches for Ernest Lundeen, who we're going to hear a lot about. And if you listen to Rachel, you know all about Ernest Lundeen. Probably never heard of him before, Rachel. But Rachel teaches us things on a weekly basis. Wrote speeches. And these are pro-German, pro-fascist, anti-American speeches that are nevertheless dressed up to sound like they're not so anti-American. And he also talked up with members of Congress. He was palsy with members of Congress and got them to tell him stories. And so he would give intelligence reports back to his German overlords. Well, Representative X thinks this. Senator Y thinks that. They're going to do this. And so he was a conduit of information about what was going on the inside back to the German government. He was arrested in 1941 for not telling the State Department about his propaganda work and for violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which essentially said if you're lobbying for a foreign government, you need to register that you are doing that. The American people and lawmakers need to know that. Otherwise, what's going on is not kosher. Viereck's response to his arrest, and I quote, "If I had worked for war as I've worked for peace, I would not now stand indicted. I am not aware that any grand jury has investigated the warmongers. My real crime is that I am an American of German blood, and I oppose the desperate and despicable attempt to catapult our country into Europe's war." Okay, let's see. Let's see what else was said. There's more evidence out there. Others had a much less charitable reaction, as you can kind of tell from my tone of voice here. And the New York Post said Viereck had two loves, American dollars and German ideologies. Yeah. And they also called him the leading exponent of Hitlerism in the United States. Viereck had pictures of Kaiser Wilhelm, Hitler, Joseph Goebbels, Sigmund Freud, and Albert Einstein on his office wall. An interesting combination of figures, and this is, of course, before we know about Einstein's. Yeah. All right. Many of the U.S. lawmakers knew what Viereck was doing and were chill with it. Viereck's efforts did not have much impact with the American people, and that wasn't his job. His job wasn't to come to Los Cucos and speak to average Americans and convince them to think this or that way. His job was to try to shape the thinking among lawmakers. That's what he was paid to do. His value was in manipulating U.S. politics. Okay, let's shift now to Ernest Lundeen, one of those politicians that Viereck was manipulating. And I need to give you just a little bit of background on Lundeen. Lundeen started out in national politics as a Republican member of the U.S. House, elected in 1916, serving in 1917, 1918, early 1919. Lundeen was one of several who voted against American entry into the Great War in 1917. That was not necessarily the death knell to a political career, but his mistake was he never saw that, oh, I lost that vote, maybe I better rethink, maybe I better support the war effort. Instead, he was a diehard, hanging on to his pacifistic views and spoke against the war. That caused Americans in his district to decide, you know, we're done with this guy. And so he was invited not to return to Congress in the 1918 elections by voters who sent someone else to do the job, who would stand up for the American men who had fought on their behalf. He had spoken out against the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations, so he just did not seem to be terribly patriotic or terribly interested in participating in the development of a solution to the problems of the Great War period. He faced hostile crowds once he made his way back home, and just faded into the background until the Great Depression in the 1930s provided him an entry point back into politics. This time not as a Republican, but as a farmer laborite. That's a third party that was more focused on domestic issues and the plight of poor and working people, farmers and workers, farmer laborite. It was an attempt to join together what otherwise were sometimes disparate interests, because what benefited farmers in the 1930s didn't necessarily benefit laborers. Laborers wanted to earn more money. Farmers wanted to earn more money. If farmers pay more for their goods, or paid more for their goods, the price of cotton and corn and cows will be higher, and workers will have to pay more for their clothes and their food. So there were natural conflicts there, and this party was trying to join them together from a liberal perspective. So that is important to note. So he gets his way back into Congress, and he shows himself to be pretty liberal, more liberal than FDR on issues like Social Security. So that's worth noting. But FDR was less a liberal and more a pragmatist with regard to Social Security. FDR said that we had to pay for Social Security through the payroll tax deductions that we all know about because we're used to seeing it biting on our paychecks. And I'm having to explain it to my teenager who is starting her career as a worker. You know, FICA's going to come along and take a bite, and there are other things that are going to come along and take bites. You might think you're making $15 an hour, but you're really not. Lundin wanted Social Security paid for out of general revenue, but Roosevelt knew that those Social Security payroll tax deductions would make sure, in Roosevelt's words, that no damn politician would ever come along and kill my Social Security. And so far he's been right. But it provided a less liberal social welfare system in the country, but a more sustainable social welfare system in the country. But the point here is really, Lundin was more liberal than Roosevelt, but yet we're going to find him out to be a seditionist and a fascist. So this is interesting to note. He remains an isolationist all along in foreign policy views, and argued that British war debts should be paid by the U.S. seizing British holdings in the West Indies. Yeah. Once he was elected back to the Senate again, Viereck spotted him as a make. He became a target for Viereck. Viereck told him, the Senate as a forum and the world as an audience can make you. Viereck knew that Lundin was poor. Viereck knew that Lundin needed money, and Viereck knew he could manipulate that for his Nazi advancing ways, and so that's what he does. He suggests to Lundin, let's go into the book writing business together. You know, you tell me a few ideas and I'll write them up for you, and you can publish them on your name, and you'll have this extra income. You can make more money writing for paid publication than you can ever make as a U.S. Senator. So let me help you out this way. So Viereck becomes Lundin's voice in and out of the Senate, and it is the voice of sedition and fascism. And Viereck told Lundin, I think in the long run you will find collaboration with me, especially if we can regularize it, more profitable both politically and financially, anything that you can do by yourself. So Viereck started writing pro-Hitler speeches for Lundin to deliver. But that wasn't where it ended for Viereck, because it's one thing for a member of Congress to deliver a speech in the House or the Senate. How many of us know what they're saying? You know, we don't read the congressional record. Does anybody read the congressional record? When's the last time you, okay, well, yeah. And we applaud you for doing that. But it's not something most Americans do. But might you read a speech from the congressional record if someone you trusted mailed it to you? You don't have to read all 800 pages, but if somebody sends you a speech, especially if it has a flashy title, one that's going to scare you a little bit, you might read that.
Yeah.
You might read that. That was the franking scheme. Members of Congress can send out for free anything that was run in the congressional record to their constituents, to their mailing lists. Yeah. And so this was the plan. Now, a lot of what got sent were not really remarks on the House or the Senate floor. Will the gentlelady yield? As lawmakers were debating marginal tax rates or whatnot. They were instead extensions of remarks. Speeches that were given before the Kiwanis Club or the Ladies Garden Club or whatever, wherever, and not said on the floor of Congress. But the laws about franking did not distinguish between congressional debate and speeches before the hometown folk. And so that's what Viereck was trying to set up, this shell game to ship out the speeches. And so he used Lundin's office as the central point for figuring out, okay, we'll get Congressman X, we'll get 1,000 franking envelopes from Congressman X, and we'll get 5,000 from Senator Y, and we'll build the mailing list together, and we'll get all of this sent out so we can spread the word to the American people what they need to be afraid of so that we can control the thought process. Sounding familiar. So I've explained Frank. Now it's time to introduce another character into the story. Hamilton Fish, good old Ham Fish, plays a role in the franking business because it's through his office that a lot of the mail was sent. His aide, George Hill, is ensuring that the truck comes to pick up the mail bag and delivers it, and that the speeches are stuffed and folded, and it all goes out. Ham Fish is another one of these. Yes, he's a Republican, and he's a rock-ribbed Republican. He started out as a progressive Republican. He was a bull mooser, supported FDR, and then he shifted. I know I'm going your left, but I'm going my right, and that's the only way I can do it in front of an audience. He started shifting rightward as time passed. He had a very famous denizen of his congressional district. Franklin Delano Roosevelt lived in Ham Fish's congressional district. The two men hated each other. Go figure. Yeah, hate. Ham Fish said, I don't hate anybody, I just revile him. Okay, it sounds like you've gone to the thesaurus and you found a fancy word for hate, because I'm not sure there's much difference between hate and revile. But okay, I'll give you a pass because I don't have time to push this further. So Ham Fish is all in on this and is helping make sure that the speeches go out, all the while denying that he's doing it. Ham Fish had a booming voice, windmilling arms. Okay, I need to move my arms. It's not a bad thing necessarily to move your arms when you're speaking. Just a little self-conscious there upon reading that. But he started as the 30s turned into the 40s, really showing much more concern about the threat of domestic communism. And Fish argued that domestic communism was more dangerous than domestic fascism.
Wow.
Some more on that. He was a leader of, this is going to sound familiar. Remember the talk of America First?
Oh, yeah.
Back, when there was an escalator ride down, and America First. That was not original to the former guy. The former guy was borrowing something from the 1940s. There was an America First committee in the late 30s and the 1940s that worked hard to keep the United States out of World War II. And Ham Fish was one of those people. You said Charles Lindbergh. He's another one. Yeah. There's a whole mess of them. A Time magazine journalist who covered Congress was just visceral in his skewering of the America Firsters in Congress. He said Burton Wheeler was a political opportunist with presidential ambitions. North Carolina Senator Robert Rice Reynolds, I'm only telling you this because what he said was just funny. Robert Rice Reynolds from North Carolina had no more patriotism than a hog. I've never really met a patriotic hog, so...
That's a good analogy.
Yeah. Gerald Nye of North Dakota, America First was a financial and public relations boon, so stepping stone for the political career. He said Bennett Champ Clark from Missouri was deemed to have an extreme case of psychological bile. And finally,
creative.
Yes. Ham Fish was a great soldier in his day because he had led a contingent of African American soldiers to war during the Great War, but had become an unprincipled, self-seeking, devious demagogue. Okay, tell us what you really think next time. Fish gave a speech in Madison Square Garden, and behind him the stage was decorated with swastikas.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that kind of is suggestive of a viewpoint. Yeah, making sure old Gloria's still back there. Don't want to be speaking in front of a swastika. Not a good look. Not a good look. So, yeah, he also was flown around Europe in a German-issue airplane made available to him by none other than Minister von Ribbentrop. That suggests that he knew people in high places in Nazi government. Maybe not who you want representing you in Congress, but what do I know? I'm just a historian. After Pearl Harbor, Fish called for national unity behind the war effort. He wanted to leave Congress again to lead another black unit into battle, but he was not allowed to do that. And he tried to deny that he had ever been involved in all of this seditious, fascist activity. He had been called to testify and said, I do not recall an association. He had a bad case of Washington amnesia. We're familiar with Washington amnesia. It happens on a regular basis. Fish's aide, George Hill, and we're going to turn to Mr. Hill now, played a pretty major role in this fascist franking scheme and proves that, while Fish might have forgotten, Fish certainly did. He acted, and he acted in a way that was not in the interest of the United States. Hill's defenders tried to suggest he was just a dupe of his boss, but really that was not the case. Hill knew what he was doing. He drove trucks around Washington with bags of mail and made sure they went to their respective destinations. And ultimately, he admitted in court that he had been a handyman, purposely so, knowingly so, for the Viereck propaganda ring. And so this goes on, and we see who they are. They have told us who they are by their words and their deeds, and we see that. One more piece to the puzzle. Let's go back to Lundeen and Lundeen's tragic death, which is, if you've not listened to Rachel Maddow's podcast yet, that's the first episode. And it's so remember our friend Lundeen is broke and subject to bribery. And he is about to fly from Washington, D.C. back home, back home. And so he gets on a modern airplane, and the airplane crashes pretty soon thereafter. And he had been acting weird before he went to the airport to get on the plane. Just weird. He was sitting in his office. It's terrible, it's awful, not really communicative, just bawling, yes. And just weird in his behavior, not like his normal self. And so that, you can dismiss that, but then when he dies on the airplane, it becomes a little more pregnant with meaning. And then when you find out there were some FBI agents on the airplane as well, there's even more meaning here. So there's a there here. Lundeen was accused of being a Nazi sympathizer by two of Washington, D.C.'s leading investigative journalists, Drew Pearson and Robert Allen. Pearson and Allen wrote, "Suspicion has been directed in Senator Lundeen's direction after many mysterious visits to his office by Viereck, the famous German propagandist, and a self-avowed friend of Adolf Hitler's Germany." So he had been outed, and this was known before the fated flight. The FBI and the Attorney General denied that there was anything to it, that this was just a coincidence. But can't say for certain, but it certainly looks like more than a coincidence. It certainly looks like Lundeen was being investigated by the FBI. And if you add up what Lundeen's wife, Norma Lundeen, does after her husband's death, running into her husband's office, "Give me the Viereck files, give me the Viereck files," just with panic oozing from every pore of her body. Yeah, okay. I think I see a there. I think this is not an accident. So we have this going on. We furthermore have Hill testifying once he's been outed, and he's, because it's amazing how people develop their memories when they're on the witness stand and it's their neck on the line. Hill said, yeah, Varick told me to use Lundine's brain after Lundine died. Yeah, to mail out those isolationist speeches, they really mattered. Hill admitted that Fish gave Varick a mailing list with over 100,000 names. That's a lot of people.
Especially then.
And Hill regularly took calls from Varick to see this thing through. The night before the verdict was due in Hill's case, Fish, who had planned to go to testify, be there for support, discovered that he had a prior engagement. And he issued a statement to the press. I'm very sorry to learn that George Hill, a disabled, decorated veteran of the World War and a clerk in my office, has been convicted of perjury. Mr. Hill is of English ancestry. Sorry. he had an obsession against our involvement in war. Any takers? I didn't think so. I didn't think so. So this was all the run-up to the sedition trial. The sedition trial finally takes place in 1944 when 30 critics of U.S. involvement in war went on trial for violating the Smith Act. The Smith Act had been passed immediately before U.S. entry into the war, and it is, it's one of those all-encompassing, we don't like you pieces of legislation. It's anti-immigrant, but it's also anti-liberal. We're familiar with that style of legislating. What's old is new again, right? So it weaves together anti-immigrant, pro-fascism, pro-nativism, conservatism, etc. And just to give you a sense, I promised you a little bit of Martin Dies from East Texas. His best friends in Congress, the people who worked for him in Congress, to his face, called him Der Fuhrer and gave him the Heil Hitler salute. I have a picture in my book of him receiving the Heil Hitler salute, and he's just smiling. I don't think I'd smile if somebody greeted me in that way. I mean, I'd be happier if somebody gave me the middle finger salute as opposed to the Hitler salute. I can deal with that one, but that one has negative meaning. Dies told FDR, and here's someone else that didn't get along with the president. Here they're from the same party, but they still didn't get along. Dies told FDR, aliens are entering this country illegally without any great difficulty. Under the loose methods by which refugees are admitted, agents of foreign powers are coming in under the guise of refugees. I would think that was from today's paper, but there's no mention of fentanyl. So, otherwise, everything that's old is new again. The past is prologue. That is a theme that runs throughout all of this. So the Smith Act was the most important tool that the anti-immigrationists had, and it required everyone who was a non-citizen to go down to the courthouse and register. Proponents of the law said that this will not only solve the immigrant problem, but it'll also help with a host of other problems, the liberalism problem and the labor problem. You see, they're using a broad brush. Texas Senator Tom Connolly said, and he was a strong advocate that the power of the Smith Act should be run through the post office. Said, I can imagine a man calling up the postmaster and saying, is old man Bohunk over here registered as an alien? Well, if not, let us know, and we'll see that he comes in. This is in the same Texas that lynched people who did not comport themselves in a way that the white power structure in the state preferred. And Tom Connolly, just as much as he was defender of the Smith Act, was also a critic of anyone and everyone who tried to pass legislation making lynching a federal crime. So when he talked about if Mr. Bohonk hadn't come in to register, then we'll make sure he does. And he knew the tools because they used those same tools to lynch people who had violated the norms of society. I'm using quotation marks. I don't know if I'm being captured orally or visually. So I'm definitely being as sarcastic as I possibly can about Senator Connolly. Okay, so this is the law that the seditionists are being tried of breaking, which is kind of ironic in its own sort of way. So we go on, and the trial, I'm not going to go into all of the twists and turns of the trial, but instead I want to kind of tell you how yet another member of Congress tries to stop the trial, as I stomp, stop the trial, because not so much he was concerned that the law was a mess or the guilt or the innocence of the accused, but was much more concerned about his own activities before there was a trial. Does this surprise anyone? And this is Burton Wheeler from Montana. Burton Wheeler was a pretty powerful Democrat, and some considered him a possible Democratic successor to FDR. His name was seriously considered as a Democrat who might run in 1940 to replace Roosevelt in the White House. And he complained, but he had also shown isolationist viewpoints. Remember, he was an America Firster, and so he does have that lineage in his political ideology. And he complained in Senate hearings about a prominent British economist who had bragged about getting the United States into the last war and promised he would get the United States into this one too. And so Wheeler had said that to be critical of American entry into the war. Wheeler had also been very, very critical of the destroyer bases deal in 1940, by which the United States gave to the British 40 World War I class destroyers in exchange for military bases in Greenland as a way to help the British while the United States was still officially not involved in the war. And Wheeler complained mightily about that, just thought that was a really, really bad idea. Apparently he was unaware of what had happened in France, and he was unaware of what was happening to Britain, and or didn't care. And he knew, so the latter. Yeah, the latter. Wheeler also opposed the third term for Roosevelt. Okay, he wants to be president, so you're not going to support the guy who might continue to be president. This is what he said about that. I do not believe Mr. Roosevelt will seek renomination, and I'm sure a great many personal friends of the president would be opposed to his running for a third term. I personally feel it would be a mistake for anyone to seek a third term. If the president is once broken, we might find a reactionary president someday seeking a third or even a fourth term. It isn't logical to oppose such an effort by a Republican and espouse it by a Democrat. So trying to make a soft argument to nonetheless pump himself up. Once the trial was underway and these 30 defendants are on trial, Wheeler pressured the Attorney General to ease up on the case. He says, I scarcely know any of the defendants, and certainly not to approve of the things of which they are charged with saying in writing. I believe that they were mostly the mouthings of irresponsible people. But however misguided many of them may have been, I cannot believe that some of them were guilty of a conspiracy to obstruct national defense or break down the morale of the armed services. It is entirely possible that some individuals and organizations may have had that in view, but to craft a catch-all indictment, including patriotic organizations and individuals with unpatriotic organizations for the purpose of smearing them, is in itself, to say the least, reprehensible and should not be tolerated in this country. What's he really worried about? He's really worried about the America First stuff he had said. He's really worried about how closely could he be tied to the seditious sputterings of the Nazi sympathizers. So that is what we've got going on here. But he takes every step he possibly can to try to roll back the trial. And we have other lawmakers who speak out on the floor of Congress against the trial. And it's not really that they care about the trial, they care about the smearing of their own political reputations. One lawmaker goes to the courtroom and sits behind the defendants, and the judge who ran this case really presided over, you've heard the Maddow podcast, it was a circus, a 3-ring circus on a good day, and a 33-ring circus on a bad day, with all kinds of crazy motions and whatnot. But the story here is the lawmakers are really afraid of being outed. My point is, the trial matters, but what really matters is the lengths to which the lawmakers are willing to go to prevent the American people from finding out that they had, as I think I said on Maddow, played footsie with the fascists. That's what they did, and they did not want to be found out. So what is the takeaway from this true crime story of lawmakers and their aides breaking the law to abet their pocketbooks, if not their political careers? Put simply, I would argue the path from political opposition to fascism to sedition is short and opportunistic. All of the lawmakers in this story saw their political careers not primarily for the purpose of making policy to benefit their constituents, but for personal profit, personal aggrandizement, and partisan demagoguery. As such, falling in line with Nazis, directly or indirectly, was easy for each of these individuals. There is a cautionary tale for our own times in the activities of these fascist-friendly politicians.
Much.
You're welcome.
We have time for a couple questions.
Yeah, I just want to ask one thing, because believe it or not, I think your speech was hopeful, because it says that this has occurred before, and those of us that are so concerned and scared right now, we've been through it before, and as you've said, it seems like the system, with the fight from everybody, can actually not make it be realized.
Yes, I think that's right. There is hope here. Many of these folk found themselves without a job in the next election cycle after their deeds were revealed. We may not know, this doesn't get taught much in American history, but Americans at the time figured out what Burke and Wheeler was up to. They figured out what Hemfish was up to. They figured out what all of these folks were up to, and they said, you know what? No, I like this other guy. And typically then it was a guy. I like this other guy. So yeah, there is hope. But for that hope to be realized today, Americans need to pay attention. So that means activists, which I think you all are, need to get out there and kind of get in the face of your neighbors, get in the face of your relatives, remind them that they have to vote and take this seriously. I've got a daughter who's going off to college in the fall. She's going to Massachusetts. She'll be 18 next year. So I've reminded her, you're not allowed to register to vote in Massachusetts. Massachusetts doesn't need you. Texas does. You may have a plan to come back, but we need your vote. For the while that I'm writing tuition checks.
There's a direct flight from Boston to Houston on United.
Yes. because she shares that frustration that people of her age have. They want everything immediately. And I said, sweetheart, your first vote for president is going to be for Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. because if you're not voting for him, you're most likely voting for Donald John Trump. And I don't think that's who you want. No. So, you know, politics is not about what is your best choice.
What's your choice?
It's about what are your available choices. And
you're never going to have a perfect candidate.
You're never going to have a perfect candidate because there's never been a perfect person.
Exactly.
We are a messed up species.
Well, give Lincoln a break. I mean, I think Lincoln was.
There was our one.
I just read a book about him. Oh, I've got to read another one now. It's so good.
Yeah. There was our one. Yeah.
So I have a quick question.
Okay.
So, this was never about ideology. This was all about power and money.
Yes.
Influence.
Yes, it was, because most of these folks had, at one, those who were to the right and conservative by late 30s, early 40s, had been liberal previously, and some were still liberal, like Wheeler was domestically liberal. So it's about power. It's not about ideology. And how much of that is still true today?
So much.
I'll pick on Lindsey Graham here.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly.
You know, Lindsey Graham was a moderate Republican when John McCain was still alive.
Yes.
He was one of the three amigos with McCain and Joseph Lieberman, who was a Democrat at one point in time and then became an independent. Who knows now? But okay, we've got weather alerts going on. There's flooding somewhere. There's rain somewhere. There's water problems to be solved. Okay.
Child abduction.
Yeah. Oh, child abduction. Okay. Well, that's
Amber Alert.
okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Professor Young.
You're welcome.
All right. So I got an email the other day. It was a very nice email from a young lady. She's a freshman at Atascocita High School. And she asked to come and talk to everybody here today.
All right.
She's going to talk a little bit about what's going on at the Texas legislature and the awful bills that are affecting the trans community. So I want to introduce Lainey Hansen. She's a freshman at Atascocita.
Hi. So, as you may have heard, last week the Democrats stopped the bill to prohibit trans youth from getting gender-affirming care and hormones and all of that. But we've seen it before, Republicans are going to keep pushing that bill over and over and over again until they find a way to just hurt and break people down even more. So me, I thought it would be important to see not just older people, but also people that this is actually affecting. A bunch of my friends, one of my closest friends, his name is Aaron, he's the sweetest guy ever. He's trans, and he's on hormones right now, and if the bill gets passed that they'll slowly start weaning him off, what's that going to do to him? Because 56% of trans youth have attempted suicide, 86% of trans youth have had suicidal ideation, and it's even higher in states that are actively trying to ban activities and things that would help transgender youth feel more comfortable in themselves. In Texas, it's almost 90% for people who have felt suicidal ideation, and then it's 60% for actually attempting suicide. And that's just, they claim to want to protect kids from the grooming that's going on, and then they just want kids to kill themselves. And that's not good. A study from Stanford University in 2015 discovered that 40% of all trans people who had started hormones and puberty blockers in their adolescence, they had less risk for suicide, substance abuse, mental health issues in general than people who had to start later in life. So if they really want to protect kids, as they're saying, and their whole idea that you can get turned trans because people will support you. Teachers will call you by your preferred name and use your preferred pronouns. The fact that they think that that is going to turn kids trans and make them mutilate themselves is not true at all. You can't even get sexist reassignation surgery until you are 18. And most people have a sense of their gender identity by age 2. So it's not like people just wake up one day and they're like, oh, guess what? My teacher supports trans people, so that means I'm trans. That's not at all what happens. And so the fact that people think that you can get groomed into thinking that you're one way or another, that's absolutely not true. You can't, it's just stupid. And I just, my boyfriend of almost 5 months, we were best friends before that, he's trans too. His therapist has said multiple times that his mental health would be so much better if he was able to start hormones. But because of these laws, he might not be able to until he's 18, which that's almost 3 years. And so who knows what could happen in 3 years. People who are struggling with their mental health because they're not able to truly be themselves, they could hurt themselves within those 3 years. My friends could die, my boyfriend could die because people don't seem to care. Because it's all protect kids until it's a kid of color, it's a trans kid, it's a queer kid. Nobody cares unless they're a way for them to fit their ideology and their just messed up view of the world. Does anybody have any questions?
Is it part of the care that is given to trans kids is counseling?
It is.
And that's what they're trying to get rid of. They're getting rid of counseling,
Right.
Trans kids, part of the helping trans kids is also the counseling part of it, and they don't care about that.
They don't care about mental health at all, but
No.
especially not for trans people. It's screwed.
I just want to ask you, do we have more people in your high school that's like you, that's politically engaged? Because believe it or not, the change that we all talk about needs, it's having people like you out there, the younger folk out there doing it. So are you making yourself over in school?
Definitely, yes. A lot of my friends, I am an extrovert, so I talk to everybody. And everybody that I talk to, I don't associate with people that are just horrible people in general. I don't associate with people who are racist, homophobic, anything. So all of my friends, they are politically active. They've gone to protest. They try their hardest to speak out. It's just harder when you're young because nobody takes you seriously.
Well, we take you seriously.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And we need you on your show, Alberto.
I'm already doing that,
I have a question. Does anybody know why Republicans have this problem with transgender? I mean, is it only to do with athletics? Was that what started it?
No.
Bathrooms.
It's not like us.
It's so irritatingly stupid. It's so irritatingly mundane. It's no one's business. Except the parents.
Exactly.
But I don't understand why it's politically it's dangerous for them. I don't see them winning with it. Do you?
No.
They're their base.
They are.
Yeah, but their base is a dwindling base.
No, I don't disagree with you.
Their base goes out to vote. In
Yes.
Spring Branch, their base went out to vote.
Yeah.
And that ISD. And people like us, we don't always go out to vote like we should.
I do think it's because like the Republicans, their like base is a lot stronger. They always make it their mission to go out and make sure that their ideas are properly accepted into like the law. So the reason that so many of these laws are passing is because more people from that side of like the right side, they come out and they actually vote way more than people on the left side.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is
Correct.
That is true.
So, part of this, the anti-trans nonsense, is a wash, rinse, and repeat of some of what we saw from Republicans in previous election cycles. Go back to the 2004, 2006 elections when Bush was running for re-election, and then the last midterm of his presidency, when all of these southern red states put anti-gay marriage initiatives on their ballots. And what that did, Bush was always going to carry Mississippi. I mean, if anybody thought John Kerry was going to win Mississippi, I've got, you know, ocean property in Nebraska to sell them because they're gullible and stupid. Kerry was not going to carry Mississippi. But the anti-gay marriage ordinances caused the percentage of right-wing conservative voters to significantly increase. And that helped down ballot candidates as well as Bush's margins. So this is just a repeat of that with a different target group. By now, most Americans are fine with gay marriage. Who cares is the attitude of most Americans. I dearly, 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 with every fiber of my being, hope that we'll be there in 5 or 10 years. I'd like to be there 5 minutes ago, 50 years ago on trans Americans, but I fear it will take a while. But I think we will be there before too much time passes, because on college campuses, the college students don't care.
Exactly.
They don't care. They care when people hate on them, but they don't care about how people identify as people identify. And if the Democrats don't figure out how to win the narrative of politics, the Republicans will come back with another group to hate on when hating on trans people is no longer a viable strategy for them. I don't know what they're going to have left, but they'll find something.
They'll go back to minorities again.
Yeah.
Color.
It goes back further. It goes back to the 1980s with Reagan and the AIDS epidemic.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. People died. It wasn't just like the trans are dying. People died because he could not deal with homosexuality at all. And for years it went on. So it's been going on steadily with the Republican Party.
Well, it's, you feed them a diet of fear and you're not.
Carolyn has a question.
I have a question. What she spoke was the truth. Let's get sincere here and get to the point is, Republicans are what? They want to be in control. And when they are in control, like they are in Texas or in other places, what's going to happen? Whatever they damn well please. That's what we had, that we're going to have time to talk about now, probably the Humble ISD election and possibly the city of Humble election. Who rules Humble? Old, white, Republican men. They control what they control, and if you don't like it, you can move if you wish. So it's about the control. It's about, we want to have everything. We don't care about you unless you're like us. I look like them, but I'm not like them on the inside. A lot of people look like them, but we're not like them. But everybody, no matter what race you are, or what multi-race you are, if we do not keep the communication, which is why Dean and I had this thing for volunteers, we need to maintain a communication with the voters. If we do not do that, many people don't know what's going on. They don't know when there is election. Many people during this election, with Natalie's campaign, they don't have any children, they don't vote in that election. Well, you probably, if you own property, you pay taxes. You live in an apartment, not your thing. A lot of people, it's not about you only, it's about everybody. If you only care about yourself, you might as well be a Republican anyway. Let's move on to somebody else who cares about other people. That's what you're talking about. You know that's right. No matter what religion you are, that I'm aware of, no matter even if, well, I'm not atheist, but anyway, or so that you can care about people, should care about people. It's not about your religion or who's in control. I don't think I would like to be controlled by somebody, pretty sure. But we have to do many things because of their laws and different things. In Texas, we've got to do a lot of things different. As a matter of fact, FYI, there is a good possibility in the state of Texas that the president, secretary of state, whoever they put in there, because Republicans are in charge, right? They're in charge. Charge and large. Do not think they're not. And defeat them, you think that even the next election? I don't think so. We got to get the people out to vote. They've got to know. It matters to you. You're not transgender, but it matters to you, doesn't it? It should matter to everybody. This country was built by whom?
Rich white men.
Construction manager. What did you say? I did not hear what you said.
Why rich men?
I'm just gonna have a seat.
It was built on and by immigrants. If you're not a Native American, wherever they came from, then you're from immigrants. I'm second generation in this country on my mother's side.
Well, what do they call slaves in textbooks these days? Yes, indentured servants.
Indentured servitude.
All right, let's bring this back in.
Anyways, come on back, girl.
We have time for one more question.
You need to get those people in charge of the Trevor Project, by the way.
When are you
They
gonna run for
break free.
president?
2015, can't do it now.
Okay, I'll vote for you.
Lady, thank you so much.
Okay, so we're gonna do it. Natalie, you wanna come up? This is Natalie.
I'm there. Good evening, everyone. First, before I start, I want to start with great gratitude for helping us get to where we got. We got a lot farther than a lot of people anticipated. So I wanted to thank you guys. Without you all coming in, I couldn't have done what I've done. For those who don't know me, I'm Natalie Carter. I just ran for Humble ISD Board Trustee Position 7.
Should have got it.
I should have gotten it. I am a Democrat, and my opponents were all Republican. They had money, they had PAC money. They smeared me, they called me names, they said I aligned with child pornography, but still, our positivity and integrity and authenticity still prevailed. We did get a good chunk of the votes. However, I was kind of told by multiple sources that, of course, had my opponent, Nancy Morrison, had just stepped aside, like she just stepped aside, like we all know she was going to do anyway, we would have took it home. And so I want to let you guys know that despite my loss, I won. Okay, I'm going to tell you why. I won a whole bunch of friends. That's a big thing. I also won a better reputation in the community. Now that I'm speaking, people are listening. So I'm very excited about that, and our influence has grown. Also, name recognition, right? It matters. Yeah. So a lot of people, you're like, oh my gosh, you're Natalie Carter? I voted for you, and I'm like, thanks. Get your friends and family next go around, we'll do this. So, but I want to rest assured that I am, listen, I don't go take my ball and go home. This is a fight. However, I just really want to point you to the results. Michael Grabowski, the most extremist, and we just had an amazing lecture about fascism, demagoguery, bigotry, I don't even know what else. I can't even, I'm running out of words at this point. But this is a warning shot. If he was able to win on his extreme ideology, 1 seat, in 2 years we have 4 seats up. This is scary. This is a warning shot. We have to begin to mobilize, formulate a plan, finances, and start focusing on school board races. Now.
Yes, now.
I can tell you this, now more than ever, school board races are taking center stage in the United States and in the news. Because they're being infiltrated by a crazy ideology that's going to permeate the brains of our youth. And as we all know from, the past is prologue. We don't want to just, we don't want to relive the past. We don't want to make the mistakes of the past. So how do we do that? Is we need to plan for the future. Okay? And so I'm just letting you guys know I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm okay. I'm not taking my ball and going home. This is only the beginning. I promise. But I wanted to thank you all and give you guys hope that now that when Natalie Carter speaks, it might mean something in our school district at least. Yeah. So that's a victory to me. And again, I've made amazing friends throughout the way, and I'm grateful for you all and your support. And I look forward to our next chapter, whatever it may be. Thank you again. I really do appreciate it. I'm like a candidate. I'm like, where's my name badge? Thank you guys.
Thank you, Natalie. All right. So when you came in, who in here lives in the city of Houston? That's a whole lot of hands. I'd like to see that. There's a petition on the sign-in table, and it's for Fair Houston. So just to give you a high level, you can take the push card with you and read more about it. The Houston-Galveston Area Council is 5 or 6 counties area. It deals with all the money that goes to infrastructure, federal money that comes into the area. So we all know that there's a lot of people in Houston, right? We have 62, in this district, we have 62% of the population.
Of what? Of Texas?
No, of this region, the Greater Houston Galveston Area Council. So
Houston is 62%?
of that region,
Of that,
okay?
yes.
So,
Council area?
Yes, the council.
so the point is there's a millions and maybe more of dollars that come from roads and bridges and flooding, all of those things. Remember the number, 62% of the vote, or the population. We have 17.9% of the vote. So if the other, math and public's not my strong suit, 83% decides that Houston doesn't get anything, there's nothing you can do about it. Nope. So what Fair Houston is about is they can force a ballot measure to put it on the ballot to reorganize this district. We in Houston have the power to affect it. Why? Because for this charter to exist, Houston has to be a part of it. If we take our ball and go home, this disappears, as does the money. They're not going to let that happen. So what this is about is to get the ballot measure so the folks in Houston can vote and we can reorganize this to more equitably spread the money around to represent the population. That's what the petition's for, and only City of Houston folks can sign it. So if you would be so kind, please sign it on your way out.
Tell them how many signatures are going to be required.
20,000 signatures.
Thank you, Oaks. 20,000. What was the last number? When I was at Roadwomen 3 weeks ago, they only had like 8,500.
I think they're at 10,000.
Are they? Okay. So we still need, but we got to do it by June.
Oh, we can do that, yeah.
I don't know that, Carolyn, but tonight's our last night for us to be able to do the signatures, so I can get them delivered.
Is there a way, is there a link or something that we can maybe share around that?
There is, if you take the flyer, there's information there. So that's why I wrote this.
The only issue with that is there has to be a physical signature. But you can print out sheets from the website.
And then mail them in.
And then mail them, yeah.
Okay.
What I'm gonna do with these is I'll FedEx them tomorrow to the organizers, so they'll have them. That way.
They're also doing block walking, and they said it's very easy because you're not asking for anything except a signature.
It's just information.
It's just to get it on the ballot, and when people find out that they're not getting their share of the money, they're pissed.
Yeah.
I mean, think
All
about
across the board.
Think about Harvey. I mean, good God, my house flooded.
Yeah, we didn't get any money from that. So it's literally hundreds of millions of dollars that we're not getting that we should be getting.
Yeah.
And if we get that, if we pass this ballot initiative and we go to the council, one of two things will happen. Either one, they'll give us proportional representation that we should have had decades ago, or they'll tell us to pound sand and we'll leave, and they just won't have the money. They'll either come calling back to us, or we can establish our own council without them. So either way, by getting us on the ballot, we have a chance to win. We have a chance to finally get the hundreds of millions of dollars that we should be getting to improve our city and improve our region. So it's very important that we do this. It's very easy. It's about time that Houston got the respect that we deserve in this region.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Oaks. Appreciate that. Okay, Anna, talk about our finances and our membership.
Okay, I was here late. On my way here, I got a call from Conchita telling me that, hey, a storm's coming, be careful. I go out to the car, and I open the door to put my box with all my papers in. Guess what comes up?
A win.
And I had to go chase after papers. I've got to be pretty close. But hopefully I have all my papers, because it's pretty bad if I don't. So anyway, we have $3,116.10 in our account, and we have 48 members. And I don't know, already discussed the bowling. Oh yes, absolutely, I can take membership tonight. Come see me if you'd like to. We'd love to. Oh, we also have shirts for sale. That goes to funding our efforts as well. And should I segue to fundraising?
That's what I'm closing.
Okay, so I'm just gonna pass it on to John.
Thank you. So if you haven't paid your membership, see Anna before you leave the seat. Sustaining memberships are only $120 a year.
Which equates to $10 a month.
Okay, so hopefully everybody got a chance to read the newsletter, and I had a little thing in there that said, save the day. So we're gonna do something fun. Last year, we all went out and busted our backsides, knocking on doors in 105-degree heat to get out to vote as part of Clubs in Action. This year, several folks in this room have been out knocking on doors for the Humble ISD race. Much appreciated, thank you all. It's time to have a little bit of fun. And part of that fun, we're going to raise some money for the club at the same time, so we can do more of that get out to vote this fall and then into 2024. So June 17th at Max Bowl, we're going to do the first annual Humboldt Area Democrats Bowling fundraiser. Bowling. So we've got it set up, and I'll send out a blast mail this week. We're finalizing some of the details as far as prizes and how it's going to get organized. But we have several different levels to sign up. You can sign up as an individual. You can sponsor a whole lane and bring 4 people. You can sponsor 2 lanes and have 8. Alberto can make a team and he can challenge me. And so we'll go together and sponsor a couple lanes. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's June 17th at 1 o'clock. And so please save the date on that. The only thing that we're working on, we're trying to decide whether to have the June meeting, like we're having tonight, and cancel the July meeting, because there's typically a July, 4th of July kind of party thing, or cancel our June meeting and have a July meeting. So that'll be coming out in the newsletter. We haven't finalized that. We started the discussions. But June 17th, Saturday afternoon, day before Father's Day, take your dad out bowling, help us raise a little bit of money for the club at Max Bowl. All right, do we have have any questions, comments, thoughts from the floor? Anything burning issues?
He's an ace roller, you know.
Well, then he'll have to bowl against Bill. Bill's our
I was gonna
leader.
say, Bill was the brains behind this. So, thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
So I want to make one point.
David?
No one should be allowed to use the lane guards. Okay? I mean, that's just not fair.
I wanted the bumpers and the little roller
Well, I'm
thingy.
sorry.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. All right, last call for thoughts from the floor. Going once, going twice. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Everybody, it's wonderful to see you. Nancy, thank you so much for coming and sharing all of that history. Great meeting. We'll see you all next month.